going on, everybody? This is Brandon with Jarhead Diagnostics. Today I'm going to show you guys the life of a mobile diagnostic technician. Here we got a 1999 Chevy Silverado 2-wheel drive that is a crank no start, and I've already got the Veris hooked up, ignition on. As you can see, I've got no communication with my PCM. So let's dive in to figure out what's causing this no communication. Alright, so here I got the wiring schematic pulled up, so that way we can check to see where all my powers come from for the PCM. So that way I can try and figure out why I'm not communicating with it. It's always a good rule of thumb to start with your powers and grounds at any module that you cannot communicate with. So as you can kind of see right here, this PCM's got two different powers. It's got the ECM1 and ECMB. Those will be the two good places to start. Alright, so whenever you're doing any type of no communication issues with any type of module, very first thing you want to do is start with powers and grounds. Kind of explained that just a minute ago whenever we were doing that, going over the schematic. Anytime you have an issue like this, always start with your schematic, know what you're looking at before you just dive right in. So on this PCM, it looks like there are two powers, both from this junction box. So very first start, I usually check the fuses. I mean, there's majority of the time a lot of issues are fixed with a blown fuse, especially with this one, because the customer stated that he was just driving down the road and the vehicle shut off on him, and so best place to start, blown fuses. On this one, there is an ECM1 and a ECMB. Let's check both of those real quick. Now, you can check them with test lights. That might give you kind of a basic, yes, it might be good, yes, it might be bad. But there have been several times where you go to check the fuse, and on a test light, it's good, both sides. But whenever you pull the fuse, there might be a break in the fuse just below where the male terminal goes in, or it might be highly corroded. So it's always best to pull fuses and check them that way versus just a quick test light. You can see it, that fuse is good. If you can see that one, if it'll focus in on it or not, but that fuse is blown. So let's start with putting the fuse in and we'll go from there. Alright, for me, whenever I find a blown fuse, before I just throw another fuse in it and check it, I usually like to get my fuse saver out. I'll put that in place of a fuse, so that way I'm not wasting fuses, because if this is like a hard grounded out issue where it's blowing fuses instantly, then all you're doing is wasting fuses. So invest in a good fuse saver, so that way it'll make your diagnostic abilities and approaches a whole lot better versus just shoving fuses in and they constantly blow. So let's get this set up. Alright, the ECMB is a 20 amp. So I want to get my 20 amp circuit breaker and then the wiring to plug it up. Then all you do with this has two different sizes, but this size I rarely ever use, and so I've taped it off just that way if I need to drive down the road with this in, I don't have an open power source just sticking out that it can touch something. Looks like I bent this last time I used it. So far so good. Let's go try and start this engine. Now the battery was dead whenever I got out here, so bear with me. Hopefully my jump box has got enough power. I forgot to charge it last time I used it. Oh, gotta love side push batteries. Now, one thing that was with this vehicle before I even got here, the shop had removed the mass airflow sensor. So that might be why it's not wanting to run right now. But as you can see, this relay did not pop. So let's throw a fuse in there, get me a little bit more power. I'll put that mass airflow sensor back in. We'll see if we can get it cranked up. All right, so I set the mass airflow sensor back in. I borrowed the shop's jump box. Let's see if we can get it to start now. Still a no start. Let's figure out if this thing popped or not. So I came out and verified. Circuit breaker is not blown. But let's see if we've got communication now. Let's get back into this vehicle. Alright, so now I got access to my PCM. Let's go all powertrain, no codes present. So you have the brake light flashing. Let's now on that code right there. One thing I should mention, I guess, is once I popped this cover, the 60 amp ABS relay was sitting right there. Let's throw this in real quick. And it sounds like the ABS module is just constantly running with this. But let's see if we can get her start. Still a no start. Let's pull this back out. Alright, so now we got communication with the PCM. Let's go back to the drawing board and see what this no start's all about. So here you'll see I have the wiring schematic pulled up. I'm trying to locate my powers or controls to my fuel injectors and ignition coils. My plan is to take, if they share fuses or if there's a fuse for the coils and the injectors, to pull the fuses out, put fuse loops in so that way I can check current to all coils and all fuel injectors at the same time. And as you can see here, it looks like all my fuel injectors and coils share fuses. It looks like there's one fuse for bank 1, one fuse for bank 2. So my plan is, like I said just a second ago, would be to pull the fuses out, put amp clamps in place, and then verify that I've got spark and fuel for this no start. So let's dive into that. Alright, so I decided to change up my diagnostic approach just for a minute so I could check something that's commonly failed on these vehicles. What I got is a relay jumper that's also got a current loop on it, Then I have my current clamp around it, so that way I can check current to the fuel pump. And then I've got my WPS hooked into the fuel rail, and whenever I turn it on, I need to set it to number 2. So this is the beauty of the 4425A over the previous models, is I've got my current clamp hooked up. It's got the BNC Plus to channel 1. As soon as I pulled up, you can see that it's set at 20 amps already. Well, it was set at 2 amps. I switched to 20, but it was already set up. But then I did set up my WPS on channel 2. Sorry for all the background noise. I am right next to a busy road. All right, let's get everything set up. Power back on. Turn my ignition switch on. Turn on the fuel pump. I should have fuel pressure. So this fuel pump's pulling more than 20 amps. So switch it to 50. Never mind. It's inverted. Give me 1 second. Another beauty about the 4425A, no more zeroing. So shows that I've got almost no fuel pressure. Showing 8.279 psi of fuel pressure. And oops, grab the right one. And I'm only drawing in the millivolts. Let's change my time base. So it looks like this fuel pump's not running at all. So the next step is going to be to get all the way down to the fuel pump and make sure I have power to the fuel pump. Make sure I have power at my relay over there. And we'll go from there. All right, so I had to shut it off for just a minute because I was running into an issue. I wasn't getting any power at my relay and I couldn't figure out why. And the reason why is because of the ECMB fuse blowing again. Right now I've got my fuel pump on, commanded on, relay's getting really hot, and my fuel pump right now is pulling a constant 17 amps. If you look over here, ECMB not only powers up your ECM, but then it also is a direct power to your fuel pump. So with all that being said, it's pulling that high amperage, and then, which actually my amperage is dropping now, it's pulling 16 amps, and then my PSI reading, I mean, I'm only pulling 3 PSI. I'm gonna look back towards the pump and take a look at that and go from there. It might take a minute because this shop doesn't have any bays, so that way we can get to the pump. It's most likely either going to be a empty fuel tank, and that's why it's pulling such a high amperage, or it's going to be the fuel pump itself is just gone. I'll let you guys know here shortly. All right, so figure I'd show you guys one thing real quick. You notice my relay popped again. It won't even let me reset. Let's turn the power off. Reset. Let's plug it back in. Everything plugged back in. I'm getting my power like I need to. Still no fuel pressure, 3 psi. I'm gonna check one more thing before I tell them that it definitely needs a fuel pump, but the way it's looking, I'm gonna say fuel pump or wiring to it, but we gotta get a lift before I can do all that. All right, popped again. So I'm gonna reset it. I'm gonna check something. It'll kind of help me guide me. Is it more in the PCM side or if it's on this relay side to the fuel pump? So wiring to the fuel pump or the fuel pump itself. I'll turn it back on. Now, this relay, I don't know if it'll focus in or not, is hot. My thermal imager is reading max temperature of about 153 degrees on this relay, and this is a jumper relay. It's not the actual relay for the fuse itself, or for the fuel pump itself. So with that being said, and the temperature going through this relay, I'm going to say it's either wiring to the fuel pump or the fuel pump itself or an empty tank. The only way to really tell is for me to be able to get this vehicle in the air and check it. I'll keep you guys posted on the outcome of this. What's going on, everybody? As you can see, my clothes have changed, and this is a few days after. Once I got done with my diagnosis, I explained everything to the shop owner about what all I'd found. Shop owner told me that before I got there, he had already put $20 of fuel in the vehicle. So we both were able to just know that it wasn't a no fuel issue, but it didn't have fuel to the fuel rail. So we discussed everything with the customer who happened to be there, and the customer opted to just put a fuel pump in it. So the shop put a fuel pump in. I ended up going to the same shop the next day for another diagnosis, and I was able to see the vehicle start and run once they finished fuel pump. I did do a current check on the fuel pump at the relay just to make sure that it wasn't pulling any extreme numbers of amperage like it was before. Everything looked like it was in fairly decent specs. So customer's happy their vehicle is running, the shop's happy that the vehicle's gone. So if you guys like these videos, please let me know in the comments below, and I can start adding stuff like this to the channel if you want. Also, I'd like to just thank you guys for watching the video, and always remember, did you diag, bro?